All right, looks like we are good to go. All right, so welcome everyone and good evening. Tonight is the next workshop in our virtual ministry fair, Servants of the Spirit, Gifts for Ministry. Before we begin, I would like to thank Ms. Ada Ramirez for providing Spanish translation for tonight's session. There is no default language, so please be sure to click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of the screen for either English or Spanish. Buenas noches y bienvenidos. Por favor, todos deben hacer clic en el icono de interpretación en la parte inferior de su pantalla y seleccionar inglés o español. Gracias. We are joined this evening by Canon Bob Williams, Canon for Common Life and Historian-Archivist for the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles, and Kip Lewis, Senior Risk Control Consultant and Safety Specialist with GuideOne Mutual Insurance Company, for tonight's topic, Your Church History and Archives, Best Practices for Congregations. As a reminder, this session is being live streamed to the Diocesan Facebook and YouTube channel, and the recording will remain available for viewing on demand. A link to that video, along with the resources presented, will also be available at the EDLA Convention website at www.diocesanconvention.com. At this time, I ask everyone to please mute yourselves. Anytime you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we will answer them following the presentation. All right, and so I am first going to turn it to our Bishop Suffragan, Bishop Diane Bruce, to open us up with prayer.
Well, good evening, everyone. Happy to be with you all. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Gracious and Holy One, we give you thanks for this time. Lord, we learn about ourselves by knowing about our history. For wherever we are, there is DNA in our system, and knowing that history informs our future. May this time together enlighten and enliven us to dig deeper, to know you and our own histories more fully. All this we ask and give thanks for Bob and everyone here in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Bob.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you, Bishop Bruce. That wonderful invocation getting us started. It's terrific to see so many friends, old and new, here on the Zoom screen. Just wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. And I see some historians here. Jamie Hammonds, Deacon Jamie Hammonds, we were talking just a few minutes ago about some photos that she sent me. And through the years, we have shared photos, memories, all sorts of reminiscences of St. Martin's in Compton, these 35 years. And I've appreciated every encounter. And we've built a little bit of history collection, files and photos and things. And so Jamie, thank you again for sending those items all through these years that you've done. And I'd encourage any of you, if you feel you have a photograph or anything that would live nicely in the diocesan archives or should be part of the collection, please don't hesitate to send it to me either by email or if you'd like to bring it. Sometimes the postal system is not as reliable as it might be. But as we're getting out of COVID restrictions and you're back around St. Paul's Commons and Echo Park, I'd be glad to receive whatever it is you would like to present. I would also like to give a shout out, please, to one of my great encouragers through the years, Canon Patsy Brierly, who's on the call from St. Cross, Hermosa Beach. And Patsy, thank you for all your great, what would I say, cheering on through the years to continue to write more of the history of the diocese and to get more things online. I really appreciate that. And anytime I see you, I'm reminded I need to sit down and write some more. So thank you very much for that. Thank you one and all. I've mentioned kind of working for the diocese these 35 years. There were 4 years that I worked at the Episcopal Church Center in New York. But what I learned in the first year of service in the diocese is the importance of our stories. My great mentor, Ruth Nicastro, who was a director of communications prior to me, really instilled in me the importance of accuracy and liveliness in preserving the stories and history of our diocese. And Ruth was a master at that. And so I try to continue her standard of truly keeping our stories and guarding them and protecting them and sharing them. So I come to this work in that framework. My approach to archives and history is very simple, and I think you'll be able to take it away and remember it when you're trying to contemplate how you are going to be addressing history and archives in your context. I call it ESP, approaching archives with ESP, and that stands for efficiency, for security, and for preservation. Again, that's efficiency, security, and preservation. By efficiency, I mean something that I think many of you understand. We walk into a church basement, or we walk into a closet, or we walk into some other place that is just in complete disarray. Does that ring the bell with anyone? We also have then those places where archives are very meticulously organized. That's wonderful. That's what I call efficiency. And somewhere in the middle, we find ourselves, probably most of us. But archives are not useful if they're not efficient, if they can't be accessed. And let me say this too, right at the outset, that we're all learning, we're all approaching this step by step. And let's not be hard on ourselves or, punish ourselves if we don't have the perfect setup right now. One of the goals of my presentation here this evening is to emphasize the basics, things that we can do so that we can, get started on the longer journey of the more complex and nuanced aspects of archiving and historical preservation. So efficiency, security, you really want your archives secure. They should be locked, and the access to the archives really should be limited to the officers of your church, the rector, the wardens, or the vicar, and then a person whom you trust as archivist or historian, historiographer. My particular role these last 10 years, I've been appointed by the bishop to serve as the historiographer and the archivist of diocesan convention. So you can use those terms fairly interchangeably. Historiographer has the added note to it, like a biographer. You're telling the story as well as preserving it. As many of you know, that's the role of historiographer. So we've got efficiency, we've got security, and we've got preservation. My colleague Kip will get into the importance of digitizing and some real strategies of how to handle that. So I'm going to leave that to his expertise. And Kip, I'm just so thrilled that you're here. It's been a joy getting to know you through the preparations, and so thank you. I hope you'll I know you've visited a lot of congregations in the diocese, and I hope you'll stay close to this work too. I'd really invite all of you, any of you who want to work on history in the diocese, in your local parish. We need to revive what was once called the Diocesan History Project, and that was active around the time of the centennial of the diocese. And so I'm all about reviving that and really getting it going again at the parish level. I remember one of our early meetings was at the Nixon Library when Bishop Taylor was executive director of the Nixon Library, and he convened us there. There were people from the Smiley Library in Redlands and various historians from around the church, and we'd like to get that going again. So let's plan and work together on that. So ESP, efficiency, security, preservation, and we'll cover a little bit more of this in detail as we go. If your church does not have a fireproof file cabinet, please find one, please get one donated. Sometimes even a surplus shop or a secondhand store will have a fireproof cabinet with a key. That's a starting point. I think we all can do that and put the important stuff in the file cabinet. I'm going to give you an example. When we moved to Echo Park, it's hard to move into a new building from an old building. And we were going through things, and all of a sudden I noticed under a drain pipe down in the basement, this was when all the boxes were coming in. I thought, this is not good to have this box under the drain pipe in the garage. And when I opened the box, it was the oldest parish registers of St. Athanasius Church. These date from 1864. Now, if that pipe had broken, and it's nobody's fault, the movers didn't know what was in the box and where it went, but if we'd lost that under the drain pipe, it would have been all gone. The ink would have run, and that would have been the end. So how grateful the Holy Spirit led us to that particular box. So get that fireproof cabinet, put those important relics into it. And I also encourage you to check on Office Depot or Staples or wherever you get your office supplies to look for acid-free folders and acid-free boxes. They're usually cardboard or cardstock, acid-free. Why is this? You've seen this, how the boxes, the storage boxes can sometimes turn everything in them a very bad shade of brown. And that is really not good. So there you have basics with our ESP of efficiency, security, and preservation. That fireproof cabinet, one or two, I think we probably have 15 for the diocesan records, and those acid-free folders and boxes. So that is very important. Sam, if you would roll the handout that we have, and we'll put the link in the chat here so that you can have this. Guidelines for creating parish or diocesan archives with limited resources. Don't you like the sound of that? Because we all kind of have limited resources. But I'm going to handle number one. My colleague Kip is going to take us through 2 through 4. But you can read this on your own once you have the link. But notice in number 1, this is a very important point under physical custody of the collection. By the way, this comes from the archives of the Episcopal Church and the Episcopal Archivists Association. Church bodies are legal entities that have a continuing historical identity in the wider community. There's a lot going on in that sentence, legal entities. Remember, these are not just archives for the fun of it. The baptismal records, the sacramental records, marriages and burials, and also any of the financial documentation and deeds and letters of incorporation. All of this contributes to the legal entity status of a congregation, and those documents and resources must be protected. Also, the historical identity in the wider community. You think of our oldest congregations in the diocese dating from 1864 forward. They predate many of the incorporated cities. They are historical repositories for their neighborhoods and for their regions. So it's really important that we have the wider community in mind as we are retaining and maintaining our records. As you can read here for yourself, the archives are the evidence of legal standing. They should always be available and accessible to every generation of the corporation in the community. So these other points are important. At no point should a congregation give its collection to an outside agency. If that needs to happen, the diocese should come alongside and assist that congregation. As you may know, all of the closed congregations, their records are here. I'm coming to you from St. Paul's Commons this evening. Their records are here on file, and so that's where those records can be found. But parishes and missions should not give their collections to outside entities. Sometimes in the case, let's say, of Malcolm Boyd, our famed late friend, a well-known priest, his archives are at Boston University. So sometimes there is a case of a leading person who has his or her archives in a university. That's more or less the main idea there. Sam, if you could fast forward us, please, I think to number 5, storing your paper archives. You can read this carefully. Of course, you want a clean, dry space and away from sprinklers. It's hard to do that, meaning the sprinklers, the fire sprinklers in the ceiling. But watch out for that. I've already mentioned water pipes, and watch the temperature change. I realize this is hard to do in many church settings, but give it some creativity and some thought. Maybe get a little team going together so that you have several like-minded people assisting you in this effort. Security and access, point 6. This is really important. The archives of the Diocese of Los Angeles are closed. They are not open to every person who would like access to the full collection. This is for reasons, obviously, personnel and employment. Employment records are never left open to the public. The minutes of the standing committee are not public. Some of them can be requested from the archivist or from the bishop's office. But it's not a case of where we are here, a vibrant, lovely history center. We'd like to have one day. But as you can see here in point 3, personnel and confidential records should be marked as closed or confidential. Whole series of such records should be stored in locked file cabinets or kept visibly distinct place in the archives room, et cetera, to help the coordinator monitor and restrict access. So keep your archives locked. It's not everybody's priority or prerogative to be part of the archives, and work with your rector and your vicar and wardens to keep this level of security. I don't mean to sound too paranoid or too uptight about that, but it's really important that also the archivist knows what is going in and what is coming out, because it's too easy to lose. I remember somebody borrowed some photographs of Desmond Tutu that we had, and we've never seen them again. So there we are. Sam, if you'd scroll down into protective care so everyone can see what is there.
I'm actually going to stop screen sharing for just a moment so I can put that link into the chat for everyone. I got a request so that they could follow along with you. So give me just 1 second. I'll send you guys the link here. It's now in the chat so that you can follow along as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start screen sharing again, and we will go on to the next point. Okay, where did you want me to go? To 7?
If you could just point out section 7, the protective care, so that you folks can see and refer back to this. I've already mentioned the non-acidic boxes and file folders. Notice the last point there, particularly rare and historical valuable images and recordings should be considered for digitization. And that takes a lot of time, but offline I can help you with the kind of document cameras or the even, cell phone. Take some pictures of some of your important photos and documents. You can save them that way. And my colleague Kip is going to address that in more detail. Lastly, the point 8 here, organization of archival records. This is important, and you are encouraged to develop your own scheme that works for you. And Kip will say more about that in just a moment. Lastly, I would like to introduce a document, and Sam, I know you'll put this on the screen too, and the link. This is Archives and Records Management for Congregations. And we can segue to this as soon as you're able, Sam. This is brought to us by the Diocese of Olympia, which is based in Seattle, the Episcopal Diocese of Olympia. And it is the most excellent, detailed guide for congregations, everything from policy and mission statement, all the way through to workshops, resources, document retention, etc. And so I would commend this to you, Archives and Records Management for Congregations. It's online. And if you want the best guide among the church, this is it. We have known the archivist for many years, who has come here and done consultations with us as well. And so I commend to you everything that's available in the Diocese of Olympia, and it will help you step by step. At this point, I would like to turn do we have a microphone or a podium, or what do we have, a Zoom square, over to my colleague Kip Lewis to take us through from his level of expertise in risk management.
There we go. Did I get it right this time?
There you go, sir.
Hi, everybody. Now I know a bunch of people on the screen, but I can't really tell because I had cataract surgery yesterday. So what I have is 24 squares with 24 little blobs in them. So I'm assuming you're all people. Otherwise, I would wear these, but then you'd think there was a celebrity on the screen, and I don't want to have to do that with you. My dad said he never had cataracts because he always drove a Ford. When I was a kid, I didn't understand what that meant. And when I grew up, I realized he was joking. But what I do as a loss control or risk control guy is it's my job to figure out what could go wrong. I tell people that I try to help them not burn down, not get sued, and not get injured. And in the midst of that, I'm always looking for what can go wrong. That dovetails right into what can go wrong with keeping records. By the way, I drive my wife nuts because every time we stay in a motel, there we go. Every time I stay in a motel, as we're walking down the hallway, I'm pushing the test buttons on the lights. And she's saying, stop, you're not working right now, stop it. But it's just what I do. So as we talk about records here, I had a past life as a drummer, a musician. That was serious. I was a member of the Grammy Music Awards as a voting member and nominator for 30 years. And so I was heavily involved in the music business. So you can imagine the shock behind the scenes in the music industry when in the 90s, it was announced by one of the large tape manufacturers, recording tape for recording studios, that they had discovered that for a period of 1980 to 1985, all the recording tape that they had manufactured for recording studios, where the tape is this wide, it's not something you put in your car, but it's the actual original archive of a recording, that the magnetic dust that is on that tape that has all the recordings was falling off. And millions of recordings were ceasing to exist. You can imagine what a disaster that was. And it was a disaster because there was not a copy of that stuff somewhere else, which would have been easy to do, but nobody thought that might happen. Here's another one. Bishop Diane is going to be surprised at this, but she and I had a late in the evening short email conversation about, I'd say about 2-3 years ago. And we were asking questions about something, and I mentioned something, she mentioned something. And for whatever reason, the Holy Spirit took that moment to touch me. And she's typing away like normal, and she doesn't know that I have tears coming down my face. Well, to her, that's just what she does. But to me, it was a shock. And I don't have a record of those emails. Is that tragic? I would love to be able to go back and remember the conversation, but I can't do that. So I'll just be grateful for the moment. And I'll just be grateful that she offered herself as a servant of the Lord in that moment. Thank you, Bishop Diane. Now, when we get into, let me back up here. You can see that if we don't have a copy of something that is important, sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it really matters. Sometimes it can make a difference. And I like to tell people, if you really love Jesus, you're going to take care of his stuff. Doesn't that make sense? Drill down to, forget all the legal mumbo jumbo. If you love Jesus, you're going to take care of his stuff because you want to. Well, I think one of the most beautiful things that I've experienced is going through many of the Episcopal Diocese churches and just looking around and thinking, wow, they love Jesus. They're taking care of his stuff. Look at this place. The maintenance is excellent. The ongoing love and care of the older churches and the newer churches is consistent. There aren't good ones and bad ones. Now, there's some that need more attention than others, but there's different reasons for that, but it's consistently excellent. And you know that it must be a coincidence because everything Jesus did was excellent. So why don't we take an excellent care of the records so that we won't have to wish we remembered our conversation with Bishop Diane. If you can remember to do a few simple things. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. I don't need Elon Musk to explain it to us. Here's how it works. If you have something and it's on paper, or it's on an audio recording, or if it's on a video recording, and you're thinking it has to do with any subject matter that you want to make sure you keep, first, you make a copy of it. In risk management, the fancy word is duplication. First thing you do is duplicate it. Now, if you duplicate something through any medium that you think is appropriate at that time, it could be a DVD, it could be a CD, it could be a picture with your cell phone, and that's a really good thing, because then you email it to yourself and keep it on somewhere else. You can use a camera, you can use a variety of things. For someone to say, I don't have a copy of it in this day and age is silly. That's just silly. So you make a duplicate. Duplication is the number one risk management term for keeping records. Well, but then duplication, what good does it do you to make a duplicate and then put it on the shelf in the same room, and the room burns down, you lose them both? So we get to the second word, segregation. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with races or ethnic groups. This is to segregate the original from the copy, whatever medium you are using. Well, that medium, what do you do with the copy? Well, you can put it in a safe if you have one, and that's a smart thing to do, but it's on the same premises. And if it's financial records, which you need immediate access to, either yourself or someone on staff can take that copy home. They can put it in their garage. Doesn't have to be a fancy place. They don't need a fire file at home. Just segregate it so it's at a different location. If it's at a different location, when it's destroyed, you have the copy. Of course, it's always nice if the copy is the one that's destroyed, but that doesn't always happen. But in the meantime, you have duplication and then segregation. And whenever you can, digitize anything. Now, when you digitize something, people think, okay, it's perfectly protected. Well, not really. Do you have any CDs at home that you used to listen to some really great music, and you go and you pull the CD out and it's all scratched? Well, if that's how you're keeping your records on a CD that's all scratched, that might be a problem in the future if you want to review the CD. So you may want to instead take a picture of something and put that picture on a thumb drive. A thumb drive used to be a very special thing. Now it's like toilet paper. You can get it anywhere. You can get a thumb drive the size of your thumb. What a surprise. And you can get it for $15 and it has 50 gigs on it. There are computers that don't have 50 gigs. And then every several days, once a week, you schedule it, you make it a regular thing so it becomes part of what you do, and you just add the latest stuff to it. And then the memory gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You're not going to fill up the memory. I got a friend the other day, I told him, I said, I was talking about laptops, and he says, oh yeah, I have a 4 terabyte backup that I have plugged into my laptop. I said, 4 terabytes? What are you, NASA? That's insane. And he goes, yeah, I know, but I never have to think about it. I never run out of headroom. I never have to worry about if it's going to be fast or slow. I said, and because I was thinking, man, I remember when, if you wanted to buy an outboard drive to save information like that, it costs $1,000. Well, now you can get it down to $50. I bought a CD burner the other day off of Amazon to save all kinds of music, surprise, and all kinds of pictures. And I mean, it was a huge file, and it cost me $22. $22 for a burner. And those of you that don't know what a burner is, just imagine your cell phone with a wire hanging out of it, and it plugs into your laptop or your computer. And then when you save something on your computer, you just do an extra click and save it to the CD. You can put a DVD inside of it, and it'll actually burn it with a laser, the information onto there, and save it. That's actually so simple to do that you should spank yourself if you're not doing it, because you need to save this stuff. If you love the Lord, you're going to take care of his stuff. And his stuff can sometimes be a memory, an important memory. And I remember as a kid, and I walked into a Episcopal church, and I was like, wow, look at all this stained glass. Look at all those figurines. Look at all those carvings. Look at the roof, the ceiling. Look at this place. I said, why is it so fancy? You know, do they really need it to be so fancy? And someone looked at me and said, well, if you couldn't read or write, you could look around the church and know the story of the Lord. I thought, whoa, that's awesome. Well, that's literally what happened. Those figurines, that stained glass, all of that was the duplication of what happened in life. Ta-da! Now, if that church burns down and that stuff all disappears and there's no blueprint to recreate it, then it's just gone. But if we have the blueprints, the insurance company will just rebuild it. And life goes on and you haven't lost it because it was duplicated and it was segregated. That blueprint was in somebody's office somewhere. Well, what do you know? As you can tell, I'm kind of frank. I like to get just, instead of getting to terrible details that bore people, I'd rather have you know the important things that risk management stands on. Now, another thing that you can do is what's used to be special, but it's now very normal. It's called the cloud. Those of you that understand technology know what the cloud is. Those of you that do not understand a lot of technology, because maybe you have people do that for you, the cloud, here's the secret. It's not really in a cloud. The cloud is a reference to somebody, like Verizon has a cloud, iTunes has a cloud, IBM has a cloud. That's a bank of servers located somewhere for them where information is stored. And so when you do something on your laptop, if it backs up to the cloud, that just means that all the information leaves your laptop or your computer and goes to those servers and is duplicated. Hey, there's that word again. Is duplicated on those servers. And then when you need it because you lost a picture, or like me one time, I had on my computer a service called Carbonite. And it was a low monthly fee. I paid them a low monthly fee and they backed up my computer. It was in a cloud. The cloud is probably, some basement in the building somewhere in Boston for all I know. But here's what happened when my computer failed and my hard drive was destroyed for whatever reason. I just put a new hard drive in. I pushed a few buttons and Carbonite downloaded my entire content of my computer back onto my laptop. Like it never went wrong. Okay, so I had duplicated it. I had segregated it. And it cost me very little money to do. Now, Bob talked about digitizing. There's a few ways to do that. Quickly, one way is with your phone, of course. Another way is with a real camera. Not that a phone doesn't have a real camera, but you know what I mean, a dedicated camera. Or you can scan. You can take someone like Bob and say, hey, Bob, you've been a volunteer here forever. Would you take all these thousands of documents, please, and spend your lunch hour every day and just scan all the documents one at a time? Well, I don't know if Bob would be your friend anymore, but he would get it done and you would end up with a digital picture of all the documents and you can put it in the cloud somewhere. You can put it on a RAID. There's another, something I want to make you aware of. There's you know how computers have a little box? If you're not using a laptop, there's a box that your hard drive is in. Well, there's a system called RAID where you don't have a hard drive. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 hard drives, random access independent drives. So what happens is everything going onto that computer goes onto all 4 drives at the same time. So it's duplicated 3 times. And if one of those drives fails, it's on the other drive. And you don't have to go looking for it. You don't have to go to a storage room or go and try to remember, oh my gosh, what is my Carbonite password? I can't remember how to access my own stuff because I didn't write down the password. Write down your passwords. It's okay if you put it in a place that is pretty simple. Just write down your password. Sometimes just writing something down is a whole lot more secure than putting it in the digital world. Now, remember, if you say it, forget it. If you write it, you may or may not regret it because it's a permanent record. Here's something to think about. When you delete a file, when you delete something that you think, oh, this isn't important, you may be able to get it back. How has that happened, you say, because it's deleted? Well, a little quick electronics lesson. Think of your disk drive in your hard drive, in your laptop or your computer. Just think of it as a wall, and it's made out of bricks. And every piece of information is written on a brick. And when you delete a piece of information that's on a brick, it doesn't go away. That brick just changes status to, you can write on me again. I'm still available. And the information you put on there and you wanted to delete is still there. But that little space is now available to add other information. So that's how, when you hear about the FBI, the police, and all, and specialized companies saying, yeah, they can recover information, they can recover it because it was never gone. So if you think you lost something important to the church on a hard drive that failed because it was in a fire, it got wet, somebody dropped it, whatever, it's probably still there. Now, it may cost a few $100s or a few $1,000s to recover it, and then you make the decision whether that investment is appropriate. But it's still there. And that's another part of risk management where I tell people, if you think you can you can go on the internet from the church's computer and have people not know what you're looking at, then you probably also believe you can walk through them all and never be seen by any people. So we've got the basics down, where, remember, I'm hammering this over and over and over: duplicate and then segregate. If you do those 2 things, you're going to eliminate 90% of losing stuff. And remember, you may have another little boy, like I was, who says, why do you keep all this stuff? You can say, well, because this is the Lord's life, and you can look at it, and even if you're not literate, you can figure out what the Lord is trying to tell you, young man. Well, I'm blessed that guy said that to me when I was in that Episcopal church in Visalia, California, and when I was a little boy, and I'm blessed that so many of you have been so careful and interested in saving this history, because I can tell you that I'm an outsider. I'm not a member of the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles. I serve hundreds of churches, but I'm a resource for the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles. And I look at what you do and I say to myself, oh my gosh, these people are so excellent. I deal with so many people who are not in the Christian world. I mean, I see so many times we shoot our wounded, and yet I go into this diocese and I see beautiful things happen. Well, you know what? You don't want to forget that those things happen. You don't want to forget that picture of Desmond Tutu. You don't want to forget all these different things. Save them, save them, save them, duplicate them, segregate them. Do everything that you can so that you don't lose it. You may think a small picture is not important. Somebody else may walk up and say, holy cow, that's my grandfather in that picture. Would you bless that person's life in that moment? Yes, that is so cool. So,
I think this is a good time to start taking questions. What do you think?
yes.
All right, wonderful. So again, just inviting everybody, please put questions and comments in the chat. We definitely want to hear from you. So I'm scrolling back up. It looks like this one got answered by Bob, but I wanted to read it out for everyone. What are thoughts on loaning some of our historical records to a local museum that is equipped with climate control, fire protection, etc.? I'm from Trinity Redlands and the archivist for Smiley Library as the museum archivist. And Bob has already answered. Materials will be in great hands in the tradition of Char and Larry Burgess. I'm sure you'll have a good written list of what has been loaned and a specified return date. So do either of you have more comments on that, on loaning historical records to a museum?
All I would add is be sure you have the kind of list that that Nancy and I were discussing in the chat, and a transmittal. Even when the bishop's office loans items of historical import to the cathedral, there is a transmittal document. Any of the paintings of value, and we have several, there is a transmittal if they are loaned. But that, and also evaluation of what the painting is worth or what the liturgical item is worth. And you know, going back to my ESP theory of efficiency, that thumb drive, that's your other takeaway, our takeaway for tonight. Fireproof file cabinet, acid-free folders, but boy, we can get a thumb drive and back up so easily. It's really great. And something else that takes care of, you know, for years we've wondered, well, how do we save the CompuGraphic photos? How do we save the photos that are on Adobe? How do we save this? How do we save that? The thumb drive makes that really easy. Great.
All right. All right. The next question that we received, what resolution do you recommend for scanning photos and documents?
Which,
Kip, you have a thought on that?
would you repeat that question?
Yeah. What resolution do you recommend for scanning photos and documents? So how high of a quality do you recommend?
You know, that's a very good technical question. That will be determined entirely by the amount of memory you have available. The higher resolution you use, the fewer pictures you can save on the same device. And so one of the things that you can do, of course, it would be great to use the highest resolution possible, but sometimes that's wasted space, and it's not necessary. So decide what you want to do with the record. Is it a document? If it's a document, then you can lower the resolution, and to your natural eye, it will be the same. If it's a photograph, you can lower the resolution, but not as much without changing the picture. When the resolution that you're talking about generally has an effect on how big you can make something. So if you have a picture that is always going to be, it's a 5x7 picture and it's always going to be 5x7, then you can lower the resolution. But if you want to make that picture bigger, like on a poster, and you lower the resolution, then it's just going to get grainy. So think about what you're going to do in the end result, end use of the picture, and think about how much space you have to save things.
All right. All right. Thank you. Next, Bishop Diane, actually a little bit of advice there. She says that she has all of her passwords in a book that is hidden in her house. And yes, she knows where it is. So back to writing down your passwords. Have a record. All right. Next question we have. Any ideas for how to get the vestry, rector, priest in charge to seriously consider the importance of these things? I've been trying to convince these people to install a separate disk station or personal cloud for the last 20 years.
Oh my. Well, I don't even know where to begin with that one, although I can imagine, you know, some of us working with the same clergy for 20 years or the same vestries we understand. Is that Marcia, my friend Marcia Van Valkenburg, asking that question?
This one comes from Irene Cowley.
Oh, Irene, my other friend. Irene. I think it's very important, and I think that knowing some of the the clergy and vestry members there at your parish, I would be happy to come alongside you and stress the importance of this because it's just, we can't live in a world where we're not protecting documents in this day and age. And so I would be glad you can share with them the guide from the Diocese of Olympia. But I would be, as I say, glad to come alongside you because this is important and we need to get it taken care of. Especially your church is so historic, really important.
So would you say sometimes it takes a little bit of outside help to convince people?
Well, I'm sure that's true. And there are any number of archivists, I think of the UCLA School of Library Science and Archiving on the West Side. Those individuals are available for internships now that we're breaking out of COVID. So we could make a connection there too for any of you if you would like.
All right. Next question. Do you recommend that we save every single document we have? Our parish is putting together a video archive to cover the 65 years of our parish, and we're saving the hard documents, minutes of meetings, financial docs, etc., but we're not including every single thing. Do you think we should back up every single document?
That's Marcia, right?
Yes, that one's Marcia.
Back up as much as you can. Because it will only be a wonderful permanent record going forward. The question that Kip and I cannot answer for you all tonight is how long to retain documents. The main thing to do is to develop a strategy. Maybe you're going to say, we save these documents for 7 years. You're going to talk to your parish attorney. You're going to talk to your finance people. What is required for them from a fiduciary standpoint? Kip and I cannot tell you the number of years to retain your documents, but what you need is your own congregation written document and adhere to that strictly. Isn't that correct, Kip?
Yeah, the reason we can't tell you is because there are statutory limitations and requirements related to saving documents. And in some industries, it's X amount of years. In other industries, it's X amount of years. The IRS wants you to save documents for a certain number of years. And so that answer is best coming from a qualified person in that area, such as an accountant or a lawyer.
Okay. Do you have specific thoughts on old vestry minutes? Should those be archived? That's the next question we got.
Would you repeat that question?
Old vestry minutes, should those be archived?
Yes. They're part of the permanent record of the corporation.
All right. How do we document artwork that's on loan from parishioners?
A cell phone camera, high-grade digital camera. You know, I'll let you in on a secret. The portrait that we have of Bishop Rusak in the St. Paul's Commons here is a digitized copy. You'd never know it. It looks like an oil painting. The same artist, you remember the portrait of Bill Clinton in the White House, the most recent one that's been hung there? It was the same portrait artist. The portrait was of great value. And so when next time you're here, come and look. It's a digitized copy. You'd never know it.
All right. Next question. This one's from Deacon Jamie. Paintings from the chapel at Martin Luther King Medical Center were moved by diocesan staff members. Are they still at the diocese? I authorized one of them to go to a mission congregation.
I imagine they are. There is an inventory. I don't mean to be vague about it. We can check with Luis, the building superintendent. I just had a question today about a piece of stained glass, and he will know. He has very, very clear records. So we can check. And I remember that altar that was there at MLK. That was at Diocesan House for many years. And so let's work on that, Jamie, and see what we can find out.
All right. Next, I would like a connection to the students at UCLA.
Okay, fine. I don't have it here handy, but maybe we can record your question in the chat and get back to you on that.
Okay, sounds good. So that'll be a resource available after tonight. Next question. Part of the PR for this presentation had to do with the relationship between our individual history and the diocesan history. How do our individual records get shared with the diocese?
Marcia, I'm really glad that you asked that question because it goes back. I was a little too strict when I said that the archives are closed. I've got here near me a file that every parish has a file like this in the archive. Some of them, they're this old green kind of a look, but there are any number of public documents in these folders, some of them going back into the 1800s. So I would be happy to pull the file for any of you. I've done it, I do it practically every month. But for St. Andrew and St. Charles, we can see what is here and make the connections together. Be glad to do that. I'm not sure if I answered your question. I hope I did. You know where to find me.
Can I follow it up?
Sure.
So what do you want us to send you? Once we save all this stuff digitally and stuff, is there some format that we follow for what our individual history? How do we submit that so you have something? So you have something at the diocese. That's really what my question.
Thank you for emphasizing how it works two ways. I think Word documents and any JPEGs of photos would be great. And it need not be extensive at this point, but the highlights that you think are really important. You know what I'd like to do? Is this a good time, Sam, to segue to just the brief description of what parishes can do in terms of their history?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very briefly, and we have some interesting video to show you in just a moment. But you might be considering a parish history. Take a look at the thickness of this volume. This is from St. Mark's, Glendale. It's called St. Mark's Journey, and it's by Bruce Merritt. I don't know if Bruce is on the call tonight, but Bruce is an amazing historian. And I have copies of this book. Any of you who would like to have a copy of Bruce's book, let us know in the chat. But this is Glendale history. It's just a beautiful hardcover book. Now, that may not be for everybody. And what I think we all need to do is make sure that we have a history page on our website and add photos and as much digital information there. And I think that goes to Marcia's point too, with the website of St. Andrew and St. Charles, because the diocese can link to that and vice versa. We are in the process of developing some new web pages on history. And ideally, by the end of this year, we will be able to access all the journals of convention going back to 1896, the first convention. And as was indicated in the description for this workshop, the impetus for it is we are marking the 125th anniversary of that convention, May the 26th, when Bishop Johnson was installed as our first Bishop of Los Angeles. So in this month of May, we're observing that 125th anniversary. Some of you will remember this book. In fact, it's titled As We Remember. It's a paperback and very, very low cost to produce. And if you're interested in As We Remember, I can get you a copy of that too. It has the best record of Hollywood. I've written one called Hollywood Be Thy Name, which is a pretty funny way a kid used to pray. But this is called Charlie Chaplin's Bishop. And there are pictures here of Charlie Chaplin, of Mary Pickford, Neil Dodd, our gang, Nat King Cole, Robert Young, you name it, it's all there. So if you're interested in Hollywood history, that can be provided too. And let's not forget our oral histories. Here's a great book. This is a printed biography of Persia Hutcherson from Christ the Good Shepherd, who had an amazing ministry of physical therapy with disabled persons, both here in LA and also in Kenya. And so, you can put together a pretty good little book. This book is titled Every Little Bit. And so these are examples of what you can do with your parish history. Lastly, you've heard the term ephemera. I think some of you, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. Is it ephemera? I think it might be. Those are all those things that might be in scrapbooks or might be laying around or might be not like a digitized record. I'm going to give you an example of this dictionary. It looks like kind of an old-fashioned Webster's dictionary. It is a Webster's, yeah. Well, when you open, it's sitting around here, you open it up, and here inside is our friend Mary Pickford. And as you flip through pages, lo and behold, Mary Pickford has autographed this dictionary to Malcolm Boyd. And it's just a fun autograph, an autograph that we have in the Diocesan Archives. So Mary Pickford is with us. At this point, you know, I marvel at this next video clip we're going to show you, and we're going to conclude with this. We'll be just a few minutes over. But it's so easy now to create video, as we know, having lived through COVID. And don't forget, the diocese was active in ministry during the 1918 Spanish, I shouldn't say it that way, the influenza pandemic, excuse me. We have this long history in our diocese, and it's great that we preserve it in every way possible. This next video, I can't believe the amount of work that went into it technically, and now we're all doing it with Zoom and with our phones and everything like that. So even in the space of 6 years, the technology has changed so radically. But the one thing I want you to watch for in this video is the 35-acre lot. Did you know that St. Athanasius Church was deeded in 1872 by Bishop Kipp in San Francisco, 35 acres of downtown Los Angeles? The parish owned from 6th Street over to 7th, that cuts across Wilshire. Figueroa was the eastern boundary, and Whitmer was the west at the hospital. And can you imagine if the diocese and the church still owned that 35 acres? We'd be like Trinity Wall Street, wouldn't we? People said the land was given away in the Depression. Well, that's true, but it wasn't the Depression of 1929 and 30s. It was what they called the Long Depression of the 1890s. So that depression is when all of that land mostly was sold off in lots of $200, $100, and so forth. But Sam, I think without any further ado, we could cut to that clip.
Right.
We'll stay with you to say goodnight. I think it's an 8-minute clip, so we'll be just a little over, but I hope you enjoy it. It takes us back to the early days of the diocese.
All right, bear with me just a moment while I share my screen.
"150 years ago, in 1864, Christmas Day fell on a Sunday. The Civil War continued to divide and to grieve the nation. Poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, who opposed his son's decision to join the Union forces, had written these familiar words. 'And in despair I bowed my head, there is no peace on earth,' I said, 'for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men.'" In Los Angeles, Unionist General Phineas Banning and Southern Democrat Benjamin Wilson, both Episcopalians, had given land for the U.S. drum barracks to mitigate any local insurgency. A new missionary priest, Elias Birdsall, then aged 34, had arrived from Evansville, Indiana, deployed by Bishop William Ingram Kipp of San Francisco. That Christmas Day, Mr. Birdsall read morning prayer with 10 people gathered near the old plaza. A few weeks before, the great drought of 1862 had begun to ease. 83 years earlier, in 1781, the first settlers, los pobladores, had founded El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora la Reina de los Ángeles de Porciúncula, the city of Our Lady, Queen of Angels of the River Porciúncula. The name recalls the basilica that continues to shelter St. Francis's Little Portion Chapel in the famed Umbrian town of Assisi, where the Italian countryside and Mediterranean climate are much like those of rural Southern California. By 1864, winemaking was a principal industry of Los Angeles. Benjamin Wilson's Lake Vineyard estate, which spanned 1,300 acres of present-day San Marino, that year produced an impressive 140,000 gallons. A search for timber suitable for cask making sent Don Benito on the first recorded expedition up the peak now known as Mount Wilson, home of the observatory where Edwin Hubble first viewed galaxies beyond the Milky Way. When Bishop Kipp first visited Southern California, he marveled at the lush vines and groves of Wilson's estate, where he returned as a guest several times. In 1851, Benjamin Wilson became the second mayor of Los Angeles after California statehood. He was a charter member of the County Board of Supervisors and a state senator for 2 terms. A mountain man and fur trapper who had been orphaned in Tennessee, Wilson crossed the country seeking passage to China. Instead, he married into California's prominent Yorba family, and he came to own ranch lands that at various times stretched from Riverside west to Beverly Hills. Wilson had an abiding Christian faith. He believed that church services would help tame the wild and dangerous frontier town that was Los Angeles at the time. This prompted him to partner with Presbyterians, Methodists, and Episcopalians to establish a continuing Protestant congregation in the city. Various ministers came and went, but it was Birdsall's Episcopal Congregation of St. Athanasius, named for the 4th century Bishop of Alexandria, that eventually took hold. In 1865, the congregation occupied its first building, located at Temple and New High Streets, where the present LA City Hall was later built just across Spring Street. Mr. Birdsall put the parish on the map the next April 19 when he delivered the public funeral oration following the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. The sermon text survives, and it will be reread this next April 19th in a commemorative observance. The sermon's original call for mutual respect and understanding still rings true in today's politically fragmented contexts. Mr. Birdsall also gained public awareness for the congregation through a lecture series offered the same year on topics of local and international significance, including political issues of Latin America. Recently renamed the Birdsall Lectures, the series will be renewed this coming year to address 3 similarly timely topics: Middle East peace, church history, and climate change. The latter forum will be webcast March 24th from Campbell Hall School in North Hollywood, with a program featuring Presiding Bishop Catherine Jeffords Shorey. Fast forward now through major events in the life of the congregation, starting in 1872, when Bishop Kipp deeded to the parish 35 acres of downtown real estate. Known as the 35-acre lot, the tract was bordered on the north by present-day 6th Street and on the south by 7th Street, reaching from Figueroa Street west to Lucas Street, where the Good Samaritan Hospital now stands. To honor the bishop, nearby streets were named Kipp, Ingram, and William, which is now Bixel. The year 1872 came early in the economic downturn known as the Long Depression, and lots were gradually divided out and sold, sometimes for as little as $75 each, to sustain the ministry of St. Athanasius Church. Vestry members at the time included Judge H.K.S. O'Melveny, whose son founded the venerable law firm, and William Billy Pridham of Wells Fargo and Company. On Christmas Day, 1883, the parish moved from the small brick church to its newly built Victorian Gothic sanctuary at 523 South Olive Street, across from Central Park, later named Pershing Square. At this time, the parish's name was changed to St. Paul's, and the church was where delegates gathered 12 years later in 1895 to organize the Diocese of Los Angeles. There they greeted the first bishop of Los Angeles, Joseph Horsfall Johnson, previously rector of Christ Church, Detroit. Bishop Johnson's repeated message to the new diocese was, "Fear not." In 1899, Bishop Johnson designated St. Paul's as the diocese's first pro-cathedral, and in 1896 the bishop assisted members of the original St. Athanasius Parish to reclaim that congregation's name and to form a new mission to serve the nearby Temple Beaudry area. The congregants preferred a small church setting and built a new sanctuary on Custer Street. When the gift of land across from Echo Park Lake became available in 1918, the wooden church was cut in half and transported by truck to this new location. This prompted the Los Angeles Times to quip that this was the first time many Angelenos had seen the inside of a church. During these years, from 1916 to 1926, St. Athanasius was served by one of its most notable and beloved rectors, Thomas C. Marshall, who went on to direct Good Samaritan Hospital. Earlier, from 1901 to 1908, St. Paul's Pro-Cathedral was served by Dean J.J. Wilkins, who thereafter went on to become secretary of the new $5 million National Fund for Clergy Pensions. Installed then in 1911 was the Pro-Cathedral's historic Murray Harris pipe organ, the ranks of which are heard today in St. James Church on Wilshire Boulevard. By 1913, the diocese included 60 congregations in 8 counties of Southern California, each rising up to meet ministry challenges on new horizons.
Well, 2015 came and went, and we're still working on the book. But anyway, a work in progress. And Patsy Brierley's going to keep me honest, and we're going to finish that. But I hope that wasn't tedious, and I hope it was informative, that we were able to tell a little bit about St. Athanasius under the rubric of hold on to those photos, hold on to those documents that you have, because they can be quite helpful when preparing a presentation like that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bob. And thank you so much, Kip. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. As a reminder, this recording will be posted, will be available for viewing on demand on the Diocesan Facebook page and YouTube channel. The resources will be posted on the EDLA Convention website at www.diocesanconvention.com. I have noted everybody who in the chat has expressed interest in receiving the As We Remember and the other, what was the other one?
Endale Parish History.
That was it. All right. So I've noted everyone that's mentioned wanting to receive one of those. And then I also want to invite everyone to join us for our next workshop in our series, Ministry Fair, Servants of the Spirit, Gifts for Ministry. On Saturday, May 15th at 9 a.m., we will be joined by Jack Rutledge from a church insurance agency to talk about cyber risk insurance. So thank you so much, everyone. Anything else you'd like to add, Bob or Kip?
Just thank you, Sam. Thank you so much for you do such a wonderful job for us. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.